Steve Maher, the Ergonomics Guy, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about wrist pain. One of the big things that we see is people that are experiencing wrist pain. And a lot of it has to do with the way that the keyboard tray is set up or the way that the keyboard is positioned. It puts your wrist in a really awkward position. So ideally, when you're typing, your wrist should be straight, okay? If it's extended or flexed, you tend to put more pressure on the carpal tunnel, which is actually just this part of your wrist right here. And if you're working with your wrist extended or flexed, you tend to cut off circulation to the nerves that run through there. But you also increase the amount of work that the muscles of your forearms have to do. And you can feel this, so if you just grab your elbow like this with your wrist straight, there's not a lot of tension in these muscles. If you bring your fingers up towards the ceiling, you'll feel these muscles. And I've been working out, so you can probably see my big defined muscles there. But you can see how hard those muscles have to work. And then if you bring your hand down, you'll feel the same thing on the other side. So by having your wrist straight, it decreases the amount of stress on these muscles. And that's important because the muscles attach here at your wrist and here at your elbow. So if you're working like this, you put tension on the tendons here that can irritate your wrist, or you put tension here and that can irritate the tendons in your elbow. So again, it's important that your wrist is straight when you're typing or mousing. And the biggest thing that we see is that the keyboard is too low and people are working down like this. Or it has a positive tilt. A lot of times there's little feet under here, and there are here too. There's one, and there's the other. And so what they do is people will put their keyboard tray in a position like this, where it's actually coming uphill, but they're reaching down. And they think they're supposed to work below elbow level, which is good. It does tend to relax these muscles. But the problem is, then your wrist is in this really extended position, and not only do you overuse these muscles here, but you tend to put more pressure on the carpal tunnel here. So what you want to do is relax your shoulders, bend your elbows about 90 degrees, then bring the keyboard up so the keys are about elbow level, and then play with the tilt of the keyboard tray so that your wrist is nice and straight, so you're not holding it up or down. The other thing that we see a lot of is people will reach out for their mouse, and the mouse is on this separate platform. And what happens there is the mouse is actually, the mouse surface is about 2 inches below the keys. So you're typing here in a good neutral position, but then you're coming out like this to get to the mouse. So what we'll usually do is recommend a single level keyboard platform. Okay? This is a work-right arm under here, and they have different platforms. The banana board allows you to mouse on either side very easily. You can slide it back and forth. But if you're using a short keyboard or you have a standard keyboard, the mouse has to sit over here, and a lot of times that puts you into a little bit of extension when you're mousing. So they do have a bunch of different styles of boards. This one is single level, and you would unscrew this one obviously, and it would screw this one in, but it works with the same mechanism. And the advantage here is now your keyboard is here, nice to put it the right way, and your mouse is at the same level, so you can reach over like this. And people always say, well, how do I mouse on the left then? First off, almost nobody mouses on the left. Even lefties don't mouse on the left. But if you wanted to, what you do, slide the keyboard to the right, then just put the mouse on the left. Move yourself over a little bit, so you're here, and now you can mouse on the left. So by simply moving the keyboard one way or the other, it takes a lot of stress off. What it does is it creates space for you to mouse on either side. So you don't need the banana board unless you have limited space underneath the desk or something like that. This flat surface works really well. Now the other thing to think about too is deviation of your wrist. So here's your wrist. It will go ulnarly or radially, and that just means it goes side to side. So this bone here is your ulna, this one is your radius. And what we usually see is people trying to use keyboards that are too narrow. So I'm kind of a wider guy. If I'm trying to use this keyboard, I tend to twist my wrist into that position. And what that does is it tightens up these muscles on the outside of your wrist, but also can put stress on the muscles and tendons that run through your thumb here. I saw a guy yesterday who was having a lot of pain. He was kind of a bigger guy like me, and he had a little tiny keyboard, and he actually twisted it like this so that his left wrist was straight, but then his right wrist was cocked like this all the time, and it was really hurting him here. So what we did, we recommended that he get a larger keyboard. So this is the Microsoft Natural keyboard. This is what most people think about when they think about ergonomic keyboards. And this is a nice keyboard if you make a couple changes. First thing is, when you get it out of the box, it has a little plastic lip here to give it that negative tilt. Problem is, it's usually too high, and again, it's going to put your mouse down here. So usually we pop that off, and then you take the pad off of the keyboard platform so that it actually fits right here. Otherwise, what happens is you push this forward, then you have two wrist rests, and you're doing a lot more reaching. But the nice thing about this is you can use it, you can sit here, it's split, and it keeps your wrist nice and straight. Okay? If you don't use the number pad, or you find that you have to do a lot more reaching to get out to the mouse, it sort of defeats the purpose. Your wrist is better here, but it's worse there. What you can think about is a keyboard like this. This is a Kinesis Freestyle keyboard, and what they've done is they put a little joint in the center so you can adjust the width, but also the tilting. It has a little mechanism here that I'll show you in a minute that allows you to change the angles. So now your wrist is in a good neutral position when you're typing, and then you're reaching over to the mouse, but you're not reaching over the number pad, so it's closer. What we find here is that if you use something like a little pad like this, and you put it here, it raises the mouse closer to the level of the keys. So again, you're reaching across instead of down. So just some little things you can do to change the angle of the keyboard or the width of the keyboard to keep your wrist in that nice neutral position so you're not increasing stress when you're typing or mousing. If you have any more questions, please contact us at theergonomicsguy.com or give us a call, at 925-377-0199. Thank you.